So, welcome. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the North Wales Police and Crime Panel. Can I remind everyone that translation facilities are available and we have just checked them. So, for the purposes of the live stream, I'm Dawn Hughes and I'm the support officer for the PCP, and I will be taking the first item, appointment of chair. So, can I have any nominations for appointment of chair, please?
John Williams, please, in his absence.
Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? No, in that case, can I have a show of hands for those in favour? I'd say that was unanimous. So in John's absence, I will now take vice chair. So the vice chair will then sit in the chair for this meeting. So can I have nominations for vice chair, please? John, Nigel.
Yeah, Pat Asprey.
Can I have a seconder? Louise, Councillor Louise, yep. Are there any other nominations? No, so in that case, can I have a show of hands for Pat being vice chair? That's fine. Can I invite Pat to take the chair then for this meeting?
Okay, thank you very much. Croeso, welcome, Haub, and especially to the new members that we have on panel. Hope you'll all have a great experience like some of us who have been here for some time have had. I'm sure you will. Can we have apologies for absence, please, Dawn?
Yep, I've received apologies from John Williams, Councillor Edgar Owen and Councillor Pete Prendergast.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, any declarations of interest under the Code of Local Government Conduct? Councillor Bithell, please.
Madam Chair, I'm a member of the DCC.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, nobody else. Okay, thank you very much. Any urgent matters, Dawn?
I'm not aware of any, Chair.
No. Right, we'll go on straight on to item 6, please, which is a confirmation hearing for the Chief Constable of North Wales. And I'd like to welcome Deputy Chief Constable of Gwent at the moment, Amanda Blakeman. Welcome. Some of the questions will be in Welsh. We have got a translator, have we?
Just check the translator.
Oh, well, right, okay. Who would like to ask a question of? Oh yes, beg your pardon. Yes, you please. Yeah, okay. Sorry, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. So just for the purposes of everybody and the stream, my name is Julia Longworth. I'm Principal Solicitor for Conway County Borough Council and I'm Legal Advisor today. So just to run through briefly the process in terms of the confirmation hearing. Initially, we'll hear from the Commissioner and invite him to outline the proposed appointment and to introduce the candidate DCC Blakeman. Subsequent to that, we'll hear from Ms Lewis, the independent member, and ask her to present her report. After that, it's the opportunity that Chair was very keen to get to, which is the asking of questions. So there'll be the opportunity for panel to all ask questions of the candidate, Ms Blakeman. And then once those questions have been asked, there'll be the opportunity for DCC Blakeman to clarify any answers that she may wish to, or indeed to ask any questions of the panel that she may wish to ask at that stage. And I'm sure that she'll be invited as well to make any concluding comments that she wishes to add at that point. Then the panel will ask all non-panel members and not non-staff members to vacate the chamber, and then the meeting will go into privacy. The press will be excluded, and there'll be a consideration at that stage of the various reports and the information that's been provided, and the panel will reach a determination. And the result or the outcome of that determination will be communicated as soon as it can be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we now go into the questions, do you think? Oh, no, sorry, we asked the independent, yes. Beg your pardon. I'm so excited to be here. Commissioner, would you like to say something, please?
Yeah, diolch, Chair, and a very warm welcome to those familiar faces here, and also a very warm welcome to the new members of the North Wales Police and Crime Panel. And I'm very much looking forward to working with you all during the remainder of my term. I think that it was fair to say that the previous panel was very well chaired, and I'm looking at the former chair as well, to yourself, Pat, and the tremendous work that you did in your time as chair. But really looking forward to us all working together and for the benefit for all our communities across North Wales. And it's that spirit of collaboration that I really want to keep instilled within this organisation on how well we can do things together in that collective responsibility, and a real true partnership working with local government and with policing as well. So with that in mind, I'd just like to, I'm very pleased to introduce Amanda here to you this afternoon as my preferred candidate. And I'm sure that you'd have read through the papers now on how rigorous that process has been. But in just to follow on, I'll be asking Gill to come in just to give you more assurances as well from her position as the independent panel member as well. So if I could just hand over to Gill, please. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you very much for including me, inviting me today. It's a real privilege to be here just to see the process through to its next phase. So as the independent member in this appointment, my role is really very similar to yours as a panel. It's one of scrutiny to make sure that everything is done appropriately. So from my perspective, in particular, what I'm looking at is to check that the process passes 3 tests. Was it open? Was it fair? And was it merit-based? So I'm assuming that you'll have seen my report, but I just wanted to pull out 1 or 2 points under those 3 headings, which to me make this a very good process, actually, a very strong process compared to the options that it could be. So first of all, you might be asking yourself, can you be really confident that it was an open process? So there were 3 candidates who were interviewed, and depending on your professional background, you might wonder, is that a good number or not? Well, for those of you, particularly perhaps who are newer to the panel, there are just over 40 forces nationally in the UK who might have a candidate at the next level down, which is a level that normally you would expect to be at in order to apply for this. So you can see straight away the pool is fairly small, it's restricted. And in some larger forces, the deputy at that level down would already be perhaps paid quite well compared to the salary of a smaller force. So that would be a disincentive for some people to apply, to move from a bigger area to a smaller one. Nationally, research has showed that there are on average about 2 applicants for each of these chief constable appointments. So to have 3 is a real testimony to the attractiveness of this post and the attractiveness of working in this area. In terms of this particular process, there was a very clear and open advert, adequate time to reply, all in tune with the guidance, and it was made available to every single candidate in the eligible pool. So anyone who could apply would have been aware of it. What was interesting, and I think unusual in this, is that in the information that went out to everybody, the commissioner made it explicit that he wanted to see some competition in this. Unless there were at least 2 people who would apply, he wouldn't proceed. Now that sends out a very strong message to encourage people to apply. You might also ask yourself, well, once you had the candidates in, was the decision open or was it actually decided in advance? It certainly was open. So there were two stakeholder panels, an internal one and an external one, and of course the final interview panel. And what was unusual in this process is that there were about 14 external stakeholders and 14 internal stakeholders, plus the 5 people on the final panel. So in all, there were 30 people who were given the opportunity to scrutinise these candidates. Elsewhere in my experience, you might have panels of perhaps 5 or 6 people. So again, I would see that as being evidence that the process was as open as it possibly could be. And at the final panel, the selection panel, 4 of the 5 members were from outside the force. And the PCC, in summing up the views, gave his views last to make sure that he heard everybody else's viewpoints first, again, stressing that he was open to hearing what other people thought and to come to a consensus. I think it's also worth considering, was it fair between candidates, particularly here where there was a mix of internal and external candidates? Well, it was agreed in advance that anybody in the process who knew something about the applicants based on professional experience or any other contact would not use that knowledge on the day. We would only base decisions on the information that was seen on the day itself to make sure that we were being scrupulously fair between internal and external candidates and people we knew and people we didn't. Feedback from the stakeholder panels was given at the end, after the final panel had made its initial scoring, again to make sure that their scoring wasn't biased. There was really scrupulous attention to making sure that the same exercises and the same timings were made available to every candidate, right down to each stakeholder on the panel having the same amount of time and the same question for each candidate. And there was also opportunity for familiarisation visits so that anybody from outside the force would not be disadvantaged by perhaps feeling an internal person knew more than they did. And again, I think in this particular process, something else that was unusual is that one of the candidates wasn't able, for good, valid personal reasons, to attend the 2 stakeholder panels. And it would have been possible to say, well, OK, as long as he can come to the final one, that'll be fine. But again, there was scrupulous attention to making sure that that person was given the same chance as everybody else. So the stakeholder panels are run on an additional day to make sure that he had the same opportunity to meet them and for them to meet him. So the last test then that I was looking at was whether the final decision was merit-based rather than on something that was perhaps more biased. So to make sure that this happened, the panel was given copies of the national guidance and some training on how to run the process. And all the assessments were based on the nationally set framework of competencies. When it came to scoring, each panel member scored privately first so that they weren't affected by what other people said. They wrote down their scores using the national scoring system, and then we collated the scores to come to a consensus. We agreed all the minimal acceptable scores in advance, and the commissioner was very clear that he wasn't willing to lower standards if the candidates didn't meet an acceptable minimal standards. And there was also involved in this process a policing advisor, the Chief Constable from South Wales, who was there for technical expertise and to answer any particular technical questions. Again, not every force does that. So that was, again, something in terms of the belt and braces approach to make sure that this was really thoroughly done. So in conclusion, then, I think you can be very confident that the team involved scrupulously followed the guidance at every step of the way, and that all the steps were performed meticulously well, right down to the last details. The panel was skilled at identifying the evidence and was readily able to come to a consensus score on which candidate scored most highly. So I think you can be confident that the process really does stand up to scrutiny, and you have a very competent candidate recommended to you as your next Chief Constable. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Gill. This is the second time you've done this for us, is it?
It is indeed.
And it's very rigorous. Did it take about a week in all to do all the panel meetings? And
Yes, there were 9 panel meetings, so 3 for each candidate, spread over, it was 5 days, in fact, wasn't it, in the end? Yes.
yeah, as you can see. Thank you. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. Now, my highlight. Can we go to the questions? Who'd like to ask the first question? Anybody? Do you want me to start? Do you want to start? Yes, okay. Councillor Louise will ask the first question.
Face the accused. Very nice to meet you. I'm delighted that you've come through such a rigorous system to sit for us today. My question is around rural policing. So particularly West Mercia and Gwent do have a very rural urban mix. We tend to be quite rural around here with splashes of urban on the coast. Could you tell us about an initiative or project that you personally led to improve rural policing?
Okay, so thank you, Diolch. So yes, I can do. Rural policing and rural criminality within rural communities affects our rural communities hugely because of that sort of vulnerability, particularly that we see around the farming community. As the National Lead for Acquisitive Crime, I'm particularly connected to our rural communities, understanding the impact of any type of criminality that affects, you know, not only the farming community, but also the feelings of safety that our communities have, particularly in rural locations. And with that in mind, I've worked very closely with plant and agricultural machinery producers and manufacturers, and also with the National Farmers Union and with the farming community nationally to look at what we can do to reduce criminality, especially looking at the exit routes for property. I've then transferred that into a forensic marking scheme with property sort of identification of outlets, where we've been able to identify property, identify auction sites where property is being stolen, and also identify organised criminals that are involved in that. One of the things that I do as part of the national acquisitive work is I've got a national intelligence team. So individuals that are working across the country and perhaps hitting, farming and rural communities, over a week across the whole country, we're able to gain intelligence and look at some really swift arrests in those areas. Part of what I do is also linked into wildlife crime, and that again plays a very important part, in what we do. So We Don't Buy Crime, which is the initiative, connected to the national picture around rural crime, connected also to those property dealers that perhaps are either unwittingly or wittingly selling property on, connected also to the opportunity to be able to reduce that criminality and identify offenders. So that's one of the areas that I've been involved in.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Okay, I think we'll ask a question in Welsh. Tisio gofyn cwestiwn. And then Chris.
Gwelais ar y newyddion bore yma, mae Gogledd Cymru oedd un o'r ardaloedd gyda'r mwyaf droseddau'r rhyw, a bod cynnydd o hyd at 4 gwaith yn fwy o bobl yn dod ymlaen i siarad am y trais ma' nhw wedi ddiodda. O'n inna wedi darllen cyn...
The beginning.
No.
Dechrau, please.
Dim problem. Okay. Pawb yn clywed, ynde? Nes I glywed ar y newyddion bore yma, mae Gogledd Cymru oedd un o'r ardaloedd gyda'r mwyaf o droseddau'r rhyw, a bod cynnydd o hyd at 4 gwaith yn fwy o bobl yn dod ymlaen i siarad am y trais maen nhw wedi ddiodda. Rydw inna wedi darllen cyn heddiw fod 70,330 o adroddiadau am dreisio wedi cofnodi'r heddlu yng Nghymru a Lloegr hyd at fis Mawrth eleni. Dyma'r nifer uchaf erioed o bobl i ddod ymlaen i adrodd am y trais a ddioddefwyd ganddynt. Chwyddiant o 19,120 ers 2020. A thraed bod chi'n galonogol clywed am y cynnydd yn y nifer o bobl sy'n fodlon dod ymlaen i siarad am y trais, mae'n dor calonus clywed mae dim ond ychydig dros 300 o'r cyhuddiadau cafodd ei dwyn i mewn, a'i dilyn i fyny'n bellach. Felly fy nghwestiwn ydy, a ydych chi'n meddwl bod y system gyfiawnder bresennol yn methu ymateb yn ddigonol I erlyn treiswyr ac ymosodwyr. Huw.
Lady, just can you just repeat the part after the justice system, please, Noel?
Neu fynd i'r cwestiwn ei hyn. Ydych chi'n meddwl bod y system gyfiawnder bresennol yn methu ymateb yn ddigonol i erlyn treiswyr ac ymosodwyr rhyw?
Yes, diolch, thank you.
Okay.
That's all right, Amanda.
Yes, got that. Yes, thank you. So a really good question, and it's something that's taxing the whole country. So I was listening to the news myself this morning and thinking about how that affects our communities. So that the first thing is that we want victims to come forward to tell us when they have been a victim of either domestic abuse or sexual violence, rape, or whatever that may be. They need to have the confidence to come forward, and we need to have the right support in place so that that first step, the difficult step, is the one that they have the confidence to come forward in relation to. We then have, and I've been able to go out and work with the teams across North Wales that are responsible for supporting victims, and then also for bringing offenders to justice in relation to this type of criminality. What we've got to do is to make sure that we've got a system that is robust enough and quick enough that those victims don't lose confidence along the way. And that is a real challenge because, you know, we've seen criminal justice system over COVID that has slowed down. We've also seen some pressures on that criminal justice system. And I think that's one of the big jobs of the future, is to make sure that we can not only get in and break the cycle of abuse that's happening in relation to domestic abuse, but we can also bring offenders to justice whose criminality is of, you know, that sort of sexual perpetrator, so that we can protect the most vulnerable members of our community. So a big part of the role, a big part of what I will be doing as Chief Constable of North Wales is looking at how I can form those strong relationships with our criminal justice partners, so I can understand every part of the process, where the pressures are, and how I can work with the Commissioner to try and tackle that, because that's going to be the really difficult part of making sure that it's quick enough, that it is robust enough, and that it gives that person the opportunity to be able to step through those really difficult steps and get to a recovery at the end. So I would anticipate and expect the amount of reporting to increase because of the fact that we know people are out there at the moment and haven't got the confidence to come forward. And our job is to make sure that with partners, we've got an adequate system to be able to bring the whole of that to effect. And that's going to be the challenge of the future.
Thank you very much. As you say, if you're expecting an increase in numbers, it means more staffing, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly means looking at the operating model and making sure that we're equipped to deal with the challenges. And that's again a big part of what I'll be doing in the first instance, is making sure that where we've got our resources, where we've got our training, where we've got our equipment, where we've got our skills is in the right place, because we've got a responsibility to all types of criminality, whether that's burglary, rural crime, sexual violence. So we've got to make sure that we've got that balance right. And the most important thing is that we give people the confidence to come forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Councillor Bithell, if you'd like to ask a question, please.
Chris, can you put your microphone on, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one question, if I may, and that's in regard to the controversial subject which got quite regularly in relation to stop the surge. And also over the weekend, for example, I think comments have been made about the particular tactic in the metropolitan area. I'm here. I'm just wondering what your views are.
Yes, thank you. So I've been in policing for 30 years, and my first 10 years of policing was as a response officer. You know, and after that, as a proactive officer, dealing with burglaries, robberies, vehicle theft. And I know that stop and search is a powerful tool, but it's got to be used correctly. So, you know, what we need to make sure, you know, within North Wales is that we've got the intelligence to be able to use the tactic and that we're targeting it in the right way. So that actually what it's doing is identifying people that are either going equipped to steal, or they are possessing, you know, sort of dangerous items, bladed weapons, or they're involved in drug supply. And that's what we need to be making sure, so that our intelligence supports how we're targeting, and we are making sure that we're in the right areas using those tactics, so we can bring those offenders you know, in, so that we get the opportunity to start an investigation, and we get the opportunity to be able to prevent criminality from happening. I've used stop and search many times myself. I think some of the things that people are concerned about, we need to show absolute transparency. So body worn video is a really good way of doing that. You know, if that search from the point that the officer decides to make a search, body worn video is switched on, then there's an opportunity for that to be scrutinised, for that to be transparently reviewed by independent members who are able to give us feedback in relation to that. There is also the ongoing work that we need to do across policing as a whole around cultural competence. So understanding, you know, our communities, understanding to make sure that what we don't do is use the tactic incorrectly and end up creating a void between us and our communities. So, you know, I think it's a really important tactic. It's something that I wouldn't want to see us abandoning, but it's something that, you know, it's in policing terms, you know, it's one of those things that we have the absolute privilege of being able to use, and it's unique, and it's something that I think, you know, it's something that needs to be, you know, maintained with the highest standards around it, so that our communities are confident that we're using it properly.
Okay, thank you. Sioned, ti nesa.
Diolch yn fawr. Dwi am gofyn y cwestiwn yn Gymraeg, jyst fod pawb yn cael cyfle i paratoi. A mae'r cwestiwn ynglyn â'r iaith Gymraeg. Dwi'n ymwybodol bod chi'n presennol yn gweithredu mewn awdurdod neu mewn heddlu o fewn Gymru, felly ydych chi'n amlwg wedi arfer gweithio o fewn Gymru hun ac yn arfer efo dwyieithrwydd. Dwi'n sylwi yn yr adroddiad gen y Comisiynydd bod o'n disgwyl i chi cyrraedd safon lefel 3 yn y Gymraeg o fewn 12 mis. Sut ydych chi am fynd o gwmpas i sicrhau bod chi'n cyrraedd y safon yna o fewn yr amser? Achos mae'n bwysig iawn yng Ngogledd Cymru, mae yna canran helaeth o'r poblogaeth yn enwedig yn y gorllewin, lle mae Gymraeg yn iaith cyntaf arnyn nhw, a dwi'n meddwl bod hynny'n bwysig i'n arweinydd yr heddlu bod yn medru cyfathrebu trwy'r iaith. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, so diolch, thank you. Again, a really good question. So dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg. I am not proficient at this moment in time, you know, but it is my absolute plan and guarantee that I will be working through you know, a full programme in relation to reaching that level 3. You're absolutely right. It is the communities, you know, they have every right to expect me to be able to communicate in first language Welsh, and I will be putting my wholehearted effort into doing that. I do already work in Gwent, you know, and you know, it is very different, you know, so the language is different between South Wales and North Wales. You know, I do recognise that, you know, in Gwent we don't have that many Welsh speaking, you know, individuals. It's you know, and members of the community that are ringing in. You know, of course, you know, I've ensured as deputy that we can meet the Welsh language standard. You know, so if somebody does ring in and wants to speak in Welsh, that we are able to offer that. But a large proportion of our community in Gwent don't speak Welsh. And what I am really excited about with this opportunity is that I'll be living in North Wales. There is the opportunity to be able to see Welsh, speak in Welsh, and a continued amount of not only my personal time, but when I'm out in the community. So I'm looking forward to being able to have that opportunity to learn a lot quicker than I have been able to in Gwent, where, I see the Welsh language on road signs, but you don't see that in the community. But I am learning, and I have a full commitment to absolutely get into level 3. It's part of the employment sort of contract and deal, and I absolutely respect it is really important for communities that I can converse in Welsh.
Nigel, you, and then me, and that will be it, I think.
Yeah,
Councillor
thank you.
Nigel Williams. Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon and welcome. Just following on from one of the last questions regarding stop search, 2 parts for me, please, Chair. Firstly, the worrying trend of knife crime, in particular with the younger generation. So how would you look to tackle and educate with knife crime, and also with drugs, county lines? Obviously, there is a problem in North Wales coming from the Northwest and the Midlands area. So what are your thoughts as regards that? Would you just carry on as you're doing at the moment? Would you look to put extra resources in, or do you have any thoughts on that, please?
So thank you. Yes, obviously the increase in knife crime across the country is a real worry. And we're seeing incidents on the news involving very young individuals, where sadly people are losing their lives. So, the schools, the Welsh Schools programme particularly, and the PCSO involvement in that, and the schools programme, and the education package that is part of that is a really important part of being able to tackle attitudes towards carrying knives and also the use of drugs. So that's an important part of it, but it's not the only part of it. There's got to be an understanding of what's going on in our communities. I would expect our beat officers, our local neighbourhood officers, our response officers to understand what is happening in their communities and be in a position to be able to act upon it. So if we have any intelligence around gang activity, if we have any intelligence around groups that are carrying knives, or if we have any issues around, fallings out between groups, that we're able to get in there quickly and intervene and work within that community to stop that escalating. The county lines issue, we've done a huge amount of work nationally and locally as well. And I am lucky in so much as I've had quite a long history in organised crime in terms of leading teams that are involved in dismantling organised criminals who work on the basis of dealing and selling drugs to ensure that they've got profit. And I was incredibly impressed with the work that the previous Chief Constable has put in place around the amount of resource and proactivity and joint working that is happening between North Wales, Merseyside, Cheshire, and the other forces surrounding us, in order that we get the intelligence in the right place, that we share that intelligence, and that we share resource to be able to tackle these groups that are causing misery in our community. I don't want people dominating our communities and causing this type of misery. So I'll do everything within my power to make sure we tackle that from the grassroots up, in terms of education programmes, proactivity, gathering intelligence, police operations, and working with our partners to make sure that we try to rid the streets of what is a toxic environment, which creates no opportunities for anybody and just creates misery. So that's an absolute passion of mine. It's part of one of the priorities that I want us to be involved in. My job is to make sure that we've got the resources to do that, and to make sure that we've got people that are trained to do that and have got the time to do that, that their time isn't being taken up by other demands. And I want us to really concentrate on that wholeheartedly. I've already had and started conversations with the Chief Constables of Merseyside. I'm due to meet the Chief Constable in Cheshire, so that we can start that very strong ongoing relationship that the previous Chief Constable had, and we can understand what problems we're sharing jointly and what we can do about those jointly.
Anybody else? Well, I shall ask mine in two parts.
Okay.
What plans, I'm well aware about the forensic collision investigating network that North Wales Police are leading on and I was just wondering what plans you put in place to reduce the amount of casualties that we've been suffering on our roads in North Wales. And also the second part is what measures will you put in place to ensure that the roads policing unit will continue to work on casualty reduction as a priority to keep all road users safe?
Thank you. Yes. So I, as part of the familiarisation for the role, I came up and worked with the roads policing team because I was really keen to see what is in place and what the roads policing team are doing, what their views are. A really professional, passionate group of highly trained and really effective individuals who are responsible for making sure that our roads are safe. I know it's part of the police and crime plan, and there's been some really good progress in relation to this area. I want to make sure that we have less casualties on our roads because it's devastating. You know, it's a devastating effect when there is a collision that involves, the loss of life or life-changing injuries. So I had a really good chat to the team about what we could do jointly, how we could continue that work and continue to build upon making sure that we'd got a professional team that's able to look at the investigation part, the investigation being really important, because once a collision happens, if we get the investigation right, we're able to work with local authorities around any engineering, education and enforcement. And that three-pronged approach is something that I really want us to take on board, so that we've got the opportunity to be able to make sure that we design out any problems if we can, that where there is reckless behaviour, we are involved in enforcing around it. And we also make the most of the educational opportunities to get people to think about speed, to think about safety on the roads, to think about things like drink drive and drug related driving. So my plan is to continue that good work, and to continue to ensure that the team have the professional support around them, the equipment and the skills that they need to be able to ensure that we reduce the amount of casualties that we have on our roads, and that we make it a safe place for everybody to enjoy the beauty that is North Wales.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll be made aware of the Olivia story, which I'm hoping that one of you might report back to some of these afterwards, if that's all right, because that has a big impact on and it's a very harrowing story, isn't it? So if you could, either of you could speak up. Yes, thank you very much indeed. Very comprehensive answers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we're now going to deliberate, ask you to leave us for a few minutes. Oh yes, I beg your pardon. Would you like to ask us any questions?
Thank you. No, I've been asked some really searching questions. Thank you very much for your time. I just want to give you some reassurance around Welsh language, and my commitment to it, and also say how proud and privileged I am to even be in this position, to be here today. So I hope my answers have been rounded enough for you, and if there's anything else, I'm happy to take any additionals.
Just one last hand gone up from Nigel. As it Tim, I'll allow it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one last question. Quite an important role of the PCSOs. Obviously, we have quite a few in North Wales. Just what's your thoughts really on the roles, responsibilities, and potential numbers leading forward of PCSOs in the community?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So our PCSOs perform a vital function in terms of neighbourhood policing, visibility, reassurance, intelligence gathering. I've worked with PCSOs who've made huge differences to people's lives, particularly more vulnerable members of our community, that they've been able to support, encourage. They've also played significant and important roles when we've had large-scale investigations, murder investigations. They've held some really important information within that community that's allowed us to be able to put the pieces together. So, you know, the roles of PCSOs in terms of being visible, engaged, and being that central point in a community, I 100% you know, am behind. That's part of what I think is a really important role. You know, we are part funded in relation to PCSOs from Welsh Government, you know, and I will be ensuring that we maintain that commitment, you know, because of the fact that, you know, part of what I want to do is to have really good neighbourhood policing. You know, if you're connected to your communities, you understand what's going on in your communities. If you're trying to deliver the very best service that you can, and you're trying to do the job of policing, it's a unique role. There aren't any other services that are in a position where they can arrest people, take away their freedom, investigate crime. You know, the public have the right to expect us to do that. And I want to make sure that we have the right people in the right place to be able to support us in doing that, and PTSOs play a vital role in that.
Okay, thank you very much. See you shortly.
Okay, thank you.
You two are here.